All right, welcome to a new episode of the eBPF and Cilium show. We are now at episode 114, which is pretty spectacular, pretty good consistency. So I'm delighted to be here to welcome you to this new episode. We've got a really good episode today. Super excited. Before we start with the topic of the day, I'm just going to cover some of the news, some recap, a couple of announcements that happened this week, and then we'll welcome our guests and we'll do lots of live demos, and we'll finish the session with some games, actual live games. So let me first start by sharing my screen, and I will be sharing the news of the week. So hopefully you can see my screen now. Yeah. So, well, we've got a couple exciting events coming out next week. We've got Cilium Con, which is co-located in Chicago, which is going to be on Monday, the 7th of November. 6th of November. KubeCon is starting on the 7th. I will be there. I'm really excited. I've never been to a conference in the US. I don't really know what to expect. I'm expecting it to be even busier and more crazy. So this should be good fun. I think I'm also excited about some announcement that will be happening at CiliumCon. Again, I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to meeting some new people and catching up with old ones. We also have the eBPF documentary, which will be finally broadcast again at KubeCon. I believe there's some watch party happening as well. I'm again looking forward to seeing what's come out. It's been something that has been in the works for 6-9 months. So look forward to watching this. The other thing that happened this week is Cilium pre-release 1.15.0 pre-release 2, which came out just a few days ago. And again, I really love that we essentially package this kind of early build of Cilium 1.15 into an easy to consume. You don't have to go and try to find the images that are built through CI. You can just go and install pre-release 2, and there are lots of interesting features, lots of new features around BGP, which always gets me excited, like the support for BGP password, MD5 password, which is a long time coming. Again, some new stuff around the gateway API, like gRPC routes, lots of new things that you can go and try out. Let us know, give us the feedback, raise some issues, obviously help us just improving the docs. But go and try it and let us know how it goes. The other thing which was announced this week is Tetragon 1.0, which was announced in this blog post by Thomas. Tetragon is not strictly Cilium, but it is kind of part of the Cilium repo and the Cilium project. And it's, I'm sure it was covered in a previous episode of Cilium, again, the eBPF-based runtime, security observability, and runtime enforcement. So it's a great milestone. Again, kudos to the community for improving Tetragon, and obviously all the contributions and also the community that has been participating in growing Tetragon to this stage. So really, again, congratulations to the Tetragon team and the Tetragon community. Now, I'm going to stop talking and bring in my guests. Here we go. Welcome, Dario, Mathieu. How are you both doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Hey, glad to be invited back once again. Doing fine, I guess.
You came before to talk about mutual authentication, which was one of the big features of Cilium 140. There's less pressure on you this time. It's more talking about the exciting stuff you've got. Well, actually, just behind you.
That's actually completely right. It was there all along. It was there last time too. Just nobody noticed.
Yeah. So the topic of today is running Cilium on home labs, and we started the conversation on the on our Slack, and I remember reading a blog post you did, Dario, a few months ago before you joined ISO Venant, I think it was, and you shared
That's
some
right,
of the where you talk about how you were using Cilium for ingress and layer 2 announcements and some other features. And Martin, you also have a spectacular home lab, as we will see later. Now, if you're watching us, then feel free to jump in and share some of your thoughts about your own home labs, what you're using for home labs, and we'll be sharing, covering a few different topics. And I mentioned this briefly in the notes here. I'm going to be asking Dario and Marty a few questions about their home lab, some very practical questions, some more goofy questions, and then we'll go and actually try some applications you both have deployed in your home lab. So maybe Marty, we can start with you. I guess why did you get started in with a home lab? What was the reason? Right? Well,
When did I get started is a very interesting question, and the honest answer to that is when I was 12 years old. I got some old computers from family, if I remember correct, and the first thing I did was get a licensed copy, because as you're young, you get them for free, of Windows Server. I think back then it was 2008 or something. Install it on there, host some services, host a website, spend 5 days in your router configuration trying to get it on the internet. That's how I got started with servers in general, and I've been doing it ever since.
Excellent. Dario, what's your home lab stories and what's the origins?
Yeah, so I think it all started 8 years ago or so, when I got my first Raspberry Pi and played around just with them. But then at some point, I wanted to expand my home lab and got a Intel NUC where I could run VMware ES6i on it. So
Yes.
I could really create virtual machines. For example, I quickly deployed a firewall and Ubuntu servers, and yeah, that's basically how it started.
Awesome. I know we've got Daniel on, and I know he's got a stack of Raspberry Pi. So if you're like Daniel, if you're watching live, maybe put in the show notes and tell us how many Raspberry Pi or Intel NUCs you've got, and we can compare. But I think maybe Marty, you are the one who's got the biggest
I won't
balance of
say the
labs.
biggest. I am honestly curious what people are hosting on there. I'm hosting a few things for myself, but I'm wondering what people do on there apart from just experimenting with stuff. Do they run something in production?
Yes. Let's again, yeah. I would love for people to share what they're running in their home labs. And yeah, the other questions I had is again. So you've got Dario, you've got some Raspberry Pi. Do you still have Raspberry Pi and Intel NUCs, or you've got a mix? Or
Yeah, so right now it's a mix. I do have many different compute platforms. I do have Raspberry Pis. I have Intel NUC, but I also have some big PCs. But they are not running anymore because they simply consume too much energy. So what I've tried in the past is to get down with energy costs, because in the end it costs me around 100 to 150 francs, which is equal to euro per year to just run it.
Wowzers. Okay. And how big is your electricity bill, Martin?
It's around that. Well, the last time I did the calculations was a year ago because the energy prices were so high. And I came out around, for running a big iron server, I run both some Raspberry Pis in my back, but also run in my laundry room a giant 250 watt at least Intel server where the powerful stuff runs on. And there I pay around 80 euros calculated in last year's prices, so that's probably 40 euros by now a month. But I also did the calculations of having, because it has 40 CPUs and it has 256 gigs of RAM, if I would get that at the cheapest dedicated server provider or any cloud provider, it will cost me double. So it's still cheaper for me to use my own energy than to rent the same hardware, which I already had at home anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, that's a good tip for people. That I think there's the fact that, if you're running some stuff into cloud, it might actually end up being cheaper just doing it yourself. Obviously, it depends if you don't always have a laundry room where you can just put your stuff
Yeah.
the space.
I think this is a very important point, because if you own the hardware at home and run it at home, you have the costs better under control. I mean, I can just say I once used a product from Cloudflare to protect my access from remote. And suddenly at some point I got a bill for $200 from Cloudflare because I had some kind of leakage in the configuration, which meant that the logs were not sent to the server internally, but via Cloudflare. And then I got a bill of $200.
Yes. Yeah, I think we all have a cloud bill horror story, but this
Yeah.
is a nice one.
I was shocked back then.
Yeah. Cool. So you've got and actually you sent me a picture of your Uptime Lab, which I will put in the show note as well. Which let me just get this picture here. You've got a Uptime Lab Kickstarter environment, right? What is it? Like, how did you come about this?
That's correct. Yeah. So I think it was almost a year ago when I decided that I want to move most of my compute platform to RM64, so not Intel based anymore, because I recognize that it's usually much more powerful when it comes to the power consumption. So with RM, it's basically more efficient than x86. So I looked around, but I couldn't really find any good setup, because I really wanted to have something which is professionally looking, which is rack mountable. And I came across this Kickstarter campaign of Uptime Lab. And what it is basically a carrier board for Raspberry Pi CM4s. And it has support for power over Ethernet and NVMe slot, which means that in the end, I will have a nice 1U size slot where I can mount just 10 Raspberry Pis, and everything looks very neat. So I'm very looking forward to getting this Uptime Lab cluster.
Very nice. And I guess what do you think you need as the bare minimum, right? Because I'm sure some people are watching that they don't have a home lab, they just want to get started getting their Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah. So I think this is a bit overkill for home usage, I would say. But I think, you can even start with just one Raspberry Pi. There are so many amazing open source projects out there that you can just install on your Raspberry Pi. Take Cilium, for example. Yeah, I mean, I would say you can start with a home lab for just $100, I would say, because that gets you a Raspberry Pi and the required SD cards and all these things.
Yeah, so do you need like some level of storage? I don't know if there are some kind of specifications you would recommend from experience, or
I think Marce has a good story about that regarding the SD cards.
I do. But I also want to jump into Nico's, what do you do to get started? Raspberry Pi is one great path to go, especially with the Raspberry Pi 5 being more focused on CPU power than anything else right now. I'm very interested to try that one out. But I have even a more budget solution. I'm try to show it without breaking down my lab. How about a 2015 Dell Optiplex? You can get these if you know somebody in an enterprise for free. If you don't know somebody in an enterprise, on Amazon for 30 euros. They have 32 gigs of RAM standard these days, an Intel i7. They do drain 100 watts, so electricity is not cheap. But they're super powerful and super cheap just to get started if you don't want to go the Raspberry Pi path. I also have 3 of those just standing out for on-demand power.
Wow. So actually, as you're here, as you just went in the back, we're going to show the special guest. I'm going to bring a special guest to stage, which is your home lab.
Which has a B.
Has a B. So you're going to have to explain how can are we able to watch a live broadcast of your lab?
So there is a link in the show notes. It goes to blinken.rpi.match.dev. It's hard to spell my name, so you can just look at the show notes, click on there. And this is actually a rebroadcast of a camera which you see duct taped up on there on the stream. Very professional. I'm a professional engineer. I use duct tape. It's put on there and it restreamed itself to the public internet over WebRTC, if not mistaken. It doesn't work on iPhone for reasons. And you can just open the link and watch the stream, which is streamed on the cluster. So the blinking lights which you see, you are causing those blinking lights.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
That's so cool.
That's just behind you. And I think we'll talk about this a bit later on, but as you can see in here, it's actually accessed via the gateway API for the ingress routing, yeah?
Yep. It's all Gateway API underneath. I work on Gateway API as my daily job, so I wanted to eat my own dog food for once and set something up with only Gateway API.
Fabulous. Cool. So just to stay back on going back to the SD card, and I believe you have some trust issues, Martin, around some poor experiences.
I've always run Intel servers and both Intel servers side by side, trying to experiment with how good a Raspberry Pi has gotten. The 4s are almost there, so I'm curious for the 5s. However, I ran one for a year on straight with a very heavy application. I think it was Kubernetes based, but I can't remember exactly what. And one day it just rebooted it, and it never booted back up. You know what happens if your Raspberry Pi doesn't boot back up. Apparently, I had too many write interactions on the SD card and just was completely worn out. I always buy the most expensive SanDisk ones Amazon can sell me, but yet it still is not enough for heavy use applications. That's why I'm happy Raspberry Pi now finally supports USB boot. So I bought these, and these are simple NVMe to USB 3 with USB-C here adapters. I just bought some NVMe SSDs in there, 500 gigs, which is the best price point for not being too expensive, but also having enough. Put them in, connecting to USB, and just flash Raspbian or whatever. Used to run Flatcar, but that's a while ago. On here, boot them, and you have reliable and actually faster storage. It is not as fast as Dario's native NVMe, unfortunately, but it's still way better than an SD card.
Got it. Cool. And actually, we were also talking about your your rack that is on display, the actual rack is actually homemade, right?
Yeah, not home design. So I took somebody's design from Thingiverse. Sorry, I do not know who anymore, but it basically is the rack that Dario was talking about, but homemade. I did a few improvements to them. Let me quickly get one out. They're actually blades, so I can just move in and out Raspberry Pis on the mount. Let me go, EB. So it's completely 3D printed. You just have blades that I can put in and out, just connect them to the switches up there. And then I have these Raspberry Pis, just ordinary Raspberry Pis. I actually bought them back when they were super hard to find, so that's why it's not full yet. I have stopped expanding it ever since. These are 3D printed brackets, which I screw them on. And they're actually cooled. You cannot see it in the stream, unfortunately. But behind it is hot glued 4 Noctua fans. And they are driven over USB and they're constantly blowing. Currently, they're blowing at maximum speed, which is still not hearable. And to cool Raspberry Pis, I just got from AliExpress, actually, these cases. So they're actually passively cooling cases, but I made them actively cooled. I just screwed them on. The bottom part I removed, I replaced with my 3D printed one. I place them in the rack, and so air is blowing from the back over the front to these fins, to the front, back out. I did benchmarks on this, and it cools remarkably well for how crappy the solution is built.
It's amazing because it's like in the data center where you have a hot aisle, cool aisle, right? You just kind of that's all you.
Yes, when I close the door on the rack, you see the temperature suddenly rising rapidly. So in summer, especially, I keep it open. In winter also because this is my heating.
So actually, I know that. I mean, I think both of you have an interesting use. You make an interesting use of the heat generated by your home labs, Dario.
Yeah, that's true. So funnily, we both have at least one of our racks in the laundry room where they can help to dry the clothes.
You can see my clothes from yesterday still on the rack left to it drying. It's my laundry room. There is a IKEA-based rack. A very great suggestion is the IKEA lag table. Sad thing is, they do not make them as strong as they used to. So mine is now upside down because it broke, and it's about to break any moment again now. So I really need to find an alternative. But I use my big iron server to dry my laundry.
And you are actually, you also have some webcams in your laundry room, and you also have a dashboard that tracks your home consumption. And do you tend to, and the question goes for both of you, like, do you turn it off? Do you turn off your lab during the day or during the weekend or during the night, or just leave it running?
So I keep it running the whole year because I found out that it's super hard, because sometimes if you turn off things, they won't turn on again. So I think it's better to keep them up and running.
And do you access it from outside? Like, do you have like some kind of VPN or way to, if you're in the office or somewhere you want to go and?
Yeah, so I do have different options to connect to my home lab from away. On one side, I'm using WireGuard as a VPN, and I can simply connect to OpenSense as my firewall. But I also have some kind of way of accessing my home lab through a software called Teleport. And the cool thing is that you can even proxy Kubernetes through Teleport. And there's even a way of configuring multi-factor authentication for that, which is kind of neat.
Very nice. What about you, Marty? How are you able to access your lab? I'm assuming yes.
Of course. First of all, my lab doesn't run just lab stuff. There are some test CMs where I play on, but it runs production systems. It runs a small Mastodon instance for 60 people right now. It runs my Matrix home server for chats. It runs my website. It runs everything, every side project I ever written. If I turn this off, production systems do go down. So I have it remotely accessible. There is a WireGuard tunnel, which I set up, which connects to all the different, because I subnetted my home network into like 6-7 different VLANs, depending on which clusters, which use case. My IoT stuff is also isolated. I don't trust those things on the internet. So it's very well made. I do not yet. I have not tried teleport yet, so I'm very curious to try that out. But for now, I just have this WireGuard tunnel.
How do you like? Do you have like an internal like RJ45 or whatever it is throughout your home to connect all the stuff that?
I have between the rooms in my home that run servers or my desk, which I need some stable connection on. I have RJ45. I do rent this apartment, so I cannot just make holes everywhere. So I hot glued it to the ceiling. You do not notice it until I tell you that over all doors is a small flat cable hot glued on, but it has the same color as the door, so people do not notice it. But it is hot glued everywhere throughout the house where there was no built-in before to make this run.
All right. Well, we might not mention it. Don't mention it when you leave the apartment.
It's hot glue. It removes without leaving a trace. That's the nice thing about hot glue.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Dario? Do you have like an internal network within your house?
So luckily, when I moved to this flat, everything was prepared. So I do have interconnection between all of the rooms. But for sure, I also do have Wi-Fi, so it's not only cable connections.
Yeah. Amazing, cool.
I think speaking of WireGuard, we can also mention that me and Marce even could interconnect our labs. So we're using a software called Tilescale, which establishes WireGuard tunnels between different locations. And the very nice thing is that I can now access Marce's home lab, and she can access my home lab, which is very nice.
I can actually access your whole /24 IP range.
That's true.
By design, we made our subnets interconnecting to try to do cluster mesh, but sadly time was limited.
Right, so this is going to be the episode, let's say episode 124, something like this. We'll come back in a few weeks, and we'll do.
I'm sure that
cluster mesh between the two homes.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get this up and running.
Good stuff. I just wanted to highlight some of the comments we've had, and I apologize, we've been so into the conversation. Muse, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Running Proxmox Home Assistant for automation, GitYard for internal Git server, bunch of services for archiving, YouTube videos and website, Bitwarden for password manager. That's pretty awesome.
I also host my own Bitwarden. It's amazing. If you're looking for something to host, Bitwarden or VaultWarden is the Rust version. It's amazing to deploy, and it is so much value.
Cool. Dan's running ESXi, and I think that's kind of a, Dario mentioned, that's a starter for many people. For me, I had a Raspberry Pi when VMware, when I was at VMware, and we launched at the time support for ESXi on ARM. I got myself a Raspberry Pi, deployed a ESXi host on my Raspberry Pi, but I've not made the most of it since then, I have to say.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage is if you're running ESXi is really that you can do so many different things, right? Because you can just delete a VM and then create a new one. You can run different operating systems and so on. You can create like virtual and network topologies. So I basically got all of my knowledge with virtualization from running ESXi in my home lab.
Well, I run some network switches 15 years ago when I was studying for my Cisco CCIE, but didn't have much room, so very quickly I had to move on to a virtual environment or rented rack because I couldn't generate.
I stay strong with real Cisco hardware.
This is why is it? Is that a 3560 or 3650? That looks like a 48 switch.
A 3750G. Sadly, I took this home for trying to build a 10 gig network out of it, but the SPF ports are only 1 gig, so sadly.
Not enough. We also have Sean, who is running home lab from a NUC with K3S and Cilium. I think the K3S makes a lot of sense as well for home labs, I guess. So.
I must say I've never played with it, but I heard it's good for Raspberry Pis.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Sean is using network policy and dabbling with Gateway API, so we'll do a bit of Gateway API. Tony is running OmniOS as my hypervisor with most of his Linux workloads via VMs. Goodness me, you have lost me, Tony. This is way beyond my knowledge. But you've got, what have you got? You've got a Brocade campus switch. I don't know where you got this one from. I don't want to know. But
yeah. Let me give you a tip. Just look for some companies that run their own infrastructure that went bankrupt in the last year or something. You can get them quite cheap, but you have to look at the right websites. That's where I got my server from.
Right, Tony get it from eBay. Wow, that's really good. Well, thanks everybody for all the comments and joining. This is great. Dario, you showed me yesterday or a couple of days ago. You showed me you also have a dashboard where you can. Could you share this with us?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. Yeah. So this one, yeah. So so this is something which I deployed when I worked on creating the cluster for this episode, because originally I wanted to have a way to monitor the availability of PacMan, so that whenever PacMan is down, I get a notification via Slack that tells me, hey, I need to have a look why it's not working. So this is a software. It's called Uptime Kuma. It's available as a Docker image. And the nice thing is that you can just configure everything through the GUI. So we could just add here a new monitor. We can see that there's so many different options available for monitoring specific services. We could monitor Redis or Radius, MQTT, just plain TCP port, or DNS. So what I did is I set up monitoring for different components in my home lab. We have Cube API monitoring. I monitor Tailscale. And what we can see as well is the side of Marche here. So I can
look at
see
my uptime,
that
100%. It's
so Marche's Cube API server is up and running, and this node here as well.
I would go and plug it, but that's my controller node, so I'm not going to risk that.
That's pretty cool. And Dan said, for a second, I thought this screenshot was from an Oxide setup. I'm not sure we can quite afford a supercomputer.
If anyone at Oxide is watching, I am willing to accept PR packages. Email me at match@isovalent.com.
Cool. Right. Let me me just see what else I wanted to share. So you mentioned PacMan, right? And maybe I should actually add this to the show notes. What's going on? I'm also going to log on and I'm going to embarrass myself live.
Isn't that what this stream is all about each week?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm gonna monitor Hubble UI and see what goes on here when you play the game.
I'll sit back and enjoy this.
Actually, level 1 is easy enough, right? That's just I hadn't really been playing Pac-Man for a while. I had forgotten that when you eat up the ghosts, then they turn into the eyes, and the eyes go back into
Starting area.
Yeah. And maybe some of the younger watcher are like, "Why is he talking about? What's this thing? I'm killing this. Look at that." Level 2, yes, baby. So while I'm making a mess of this, how am I able to access your PacMan running in your cluster?
Yeah, that's a great question. So maybe I can also explain why we are using PacMan. So when I got the cluster up and running, I was looking for a nice demo application, and I came across a Helm chart for PacMan on Artifact Hub. So there's this Helm chart that allows you to deploy this application, and it consists of a web server and a MongoDB database that stores all of the results.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make it also secure. So this is why I put the web application behind Cilium Ingress with a TLS termination. And I also do have network policies configured, HTTP network policies, which means that only paths which are allowed can be accessed.
Would you be able to share some of the log on to your terminal and share, unless without compromising anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
Obviously, people can also still watch me do something embarrassing. Let's bring Dario back.
So this is just terminal session, right? We can have a quick look on the nodes. So this is just a single node cluster that I set up for this episode because my other cluster is currently undergoing maintenance, so it's not available. And we can see as well here that the node is named Talos. And it's named Talos because I'm kind of a huge fan of the Talos Kubernetes distribution, because it's so simple and secure to run. And if we look at the pods that I have deployed, we can see I'm using Cert Manager here for getting the certificates via Let's Encrypt. So in my case, it's configured to reach out to Cloudflare to create a DNS-TXT record for the TLS challenge, which means that you don't even have to open ports on your home network because it uses the DNS-TXT record for the challenge. Then we can also see here we have some pods in the kube system namespace. Like we have Cilium, we have Cilium Envoy as a separate daemon set, because I think it's easier for debugging if you run it like this. But we also have...
That's quite a new feature, right?
Yeah, that's a new feature. I think it got released in 1.14.
1.13. My colleague is responsible for that. That's how I will know quite well.
That's great. And then we have the two PacMan ports in the PacMan namespace. So there's this web application and the MongoDB. Yeah. And we
Very
can
nice.
as well have a look at the ingress.
Right. So you are using. Sorry, I am paying attention to you, but I'm also on level 5, and I'm just killing it. So I will. You've got an ingress, and so did you used to use like a different ingress, or did you used to? Are you using? So you're using the Cilium built-in ingress, right?
Yeah. So because I didn't want to set up a load balancer, I defaulted to Cilium Ingress instead of Gateway API. Because if I'm not mistaken, you can currently not run Gateway API with Node port. I think it's only working with load balancer. So, but in my other setup, I'm using BGP between the cluster and OpenSense, and then I'm using load balancer, so LBI PAM, as once documented in my blog post. Yeah,
Cool. And we'll put actually we should put a link to that blog post in the, the notes as well.
Sure.
I am maybe because I'm an old guy, but this is level 7, and they've not been anywhere near me.
Yeah, I think you're a leader now. You're leading the board.
Do you actually have? You don't need that. We need to keep some kind of official leaderboard here. Anyway, if you want to go and if you think you can beat my score, 10,000 points and going, then let us know. We'll be watching. There is a feature on Hubble called Hubble PacMan that just shows you the. That's that's a really cool. So we've got. So I'm just looking back at my notes. What else have we covered? I'm going to have to pause PacMan, I'm afraid. And we've talked about, I think, the live broadcast. We've talked about Quake. So we talk about PacMan and how we're using home labs to dry our clothes. Martin, now let's move on to the Quake conversation. This is bonkers. Now, Quake might not be known by everybody. Actually, Quake is.
I didn't know it. I didn't know it.
Quake. You're too young, guys. This is a thing. Like for old guys.
I didn't know it before because I'm really not a big gamer. But there is this awesome list. It's called Awesome SelfHosted, and it's a giant list on GitHub where there is all applications you can easily self-host. Like, oh, you want a CRM? Oh, you want a appointment system? You want this? You want that? Oh yeah, these maps are actually one of the few that are bugged in the JavaScript version, so you might see some weird cheaters.
Yeah. Can you hear my sound actually when I play?
I can hear your sound, so I think the stream can too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you might not want to hear the.
You might want to. It's interesting that this is running in its web browser. This is not the native game client. This is all in WebGL.
Yeah. And there's nobody that this so far, so I've got nobody to destroy. But yeah, Quake is like I don't know, I can't remember when it was created. I feel like I was probably playing this when I was in uni, somewhere like this. And it's one of the older, first-person shooter game, which was a ton of fun. And you told me, you managed somehow to deploy it in your cluster, and it's also accessible over the Gateway API, the Cilium Gateway API.
I can show you exactly what I'm doing if you like.
You are tied for the lead.
Oh no! I'm sorry. So what I don't know is how can I reduce the sound or even customize my name on this?
Click escape twice, and that gets you into the menu.
Oh, okay. No.
And there somewhere should be. You can also put in your CD key because you, of course, are officially licensing this game when you run it.
Oh yes.
Uh,
yes.
Nah, I am not too sure.
Okay. Now, I still don't know how to turn it down. Is there?
System, maybe.
Here we go.
Sound, and there you go. I just turned it all the way down.
Yeah. Here we go. Now, so you can watch me. I'm hoping that some of you are going to join me on this. Let's put the link in the channel.
I will be monitoring the game service.
So I'm in the game.
You're in the game, so
Yes,
you want to face me then? Let's have a look.
I mean, this is so cool that knowing that you're gaming on Kubernetes here.
The reason I deployed this is because I had the memory. When I used to be a computer science teacher, I literally was talking about how deployment pipelines and how Docker worked for a whole semester. And at the end, it was like, let's deploy something together on a server. And I was, let's deploy this Quake thing. But I never told any of my students who were all like 18 years old, 19 years old, what Quake was.
I think
Until
I
I
got
said,
you, Nico.
let's all open that weird port 8080, which we just been deploying on. And at the end of the semester, right in the last hour, we just celebrated the whole semester by starting to shoot each other. Apparently, killing your teacher on a video game is very desirable.
It's something maybe I should have started because I brought you in and I had been meaning to actually introduce you and ask you what you actually do in your day job when you're not tinkering with your home labs lighting gun. Oh, there's somebody here who's trying. I know this is very cruel, but I need to bring up my stats here. So Dario, what do you do on your in your day job?
Yeah, so since beginning of the year, I'm part of the customer success team at Isovalent as a customer reliability engineer, helping out customers. Yeah, that's my day job.
Very good. And Martin, you mentioned you've been working on some. Hey, not you. Go away. Go away. Yes.
I've been making customers happy, but way behind the scenes by working on everything related to Cilium and service mesh. So gateway API, ingress improvements, mutual authentication, some network policies, but not all network policies. That's basically what I do to fill my days. And watching you kill people on my server.
So if you're joining us, there's 5 of us now playing. If you, as I mentioned, you can join, and if you press escape twice, you can actually go in setup and then go in player and change your name and then come and join us. Is there anything you can show on the cluster, or is it just so what you're using? Could you just log on maybe and show us while we play and pretend to be listening to you? Could you tell us about the gateway API? And it's very hard to play and try to fry people while listening to somebody explaining about Kubernetes, but
I will keep it simple. I am using everything that Dario isn't using. So I'm using gateway API instead of ingress. We did not plan this up front, but this is very nice to see both perspectives. I'm completely using gateway API for this, which I do use load balancers for with the new feature in Cilium, which is the layer 2 announcements. So what you're actually streaming now is over a Cilium L2 load balancer that announces over ARP the IP address over my local network, which is then being forwarded to my router, which is then being forwarded to you directly. From there on, you're playing over TLS. This game came out in, I guess, 2000s, early 90s. I need to look it up. It did not have TLS, so I use Gateway API to terminate TLS and WebSockets. So there are two ports which you're currently accessing on. This port 443, which gives you all the assets, and that weird long port number, which is the official port number, which is because you're running this in WebGL and not natively. It's not UDP, but it's WebSockets. And all your real-time data is now sent over WebSockets, over two proxies actually, and then going into a Node.js-based server, which makes the multiplayer happen. And this is all done using Gateway API implementation.
And this application, is that just a single application? Oh, Vinny, that's very mean of you. Is that application like a single microserver container, or is this?
Right now, it is a single container. I should actually try to split it up in two. It is some project that the community has been individually keeping alive for decades. But currently, it's one. The game assets are served with Apache still, which I did some modifications to make TLS work, and the live game server itself is yet another package, but currently it runs as one container. I did have the idea to scale it up because there is a maximum limit of players who can join. I've been thinking to scale it up and load balance it, but I didn't want to risk the game actually working. So maybe next time we can try to scale this up to infinite.
Yeah. Cool. Now, I'm getting my ass kicked by Dad. This is really embarrassing.
I gave Dan a link beforehand, and he's been practicing, so it's not fully fair.
And now it's unnamed player who's also been claiming. I was doing so well, and now I'm going down in the chart, but awesome. Okay, so how are we doing this time? It's 2:52. I'm going to go and play for another 5 minutes. I think I probably have to go and pick up my kids from school, and that would be embarrassing if they were left behind because their father is playing on Quake and they're live.
They're watching a school right now to you playing and not picking them up.
Oh, this has been so much fun. I will. But let me see. There were a couple of more questions here and comments. Cool. Going back to Gateway API. Does Cilium Gateway API support the infrastructure stanza gateway resource?
We use the gateway resource for bounding our routes, which you can create multiple gateways with. We are working on expanding this, but we're waiting for finishing upstream, with 1.0 is slowly happening to support, for example, node ports or existing services. That's one of the things is the Gamma proposal is to make sure we can also support east-west traffic. We are working closely with the upstream Gateway API project, and what they finalize, we will implement, but we want to make sure that they finalize something before we start going the ingress route of inventing own annotations again.
Awesome. And there is actually a session I'm really looking forward to at KubeCon next week, which is Gateway API 1.0 formal announcement, which is going to be, I think, on Wednesday, which I think should be a really good one.
Cilium support for 1.0 is being merged right now, so that's the scoop. It's not a scope you can just simply look at GitHub, but it's being merged right now.
Awesome. Cool. So if anybody wants to keep playing games over that running in your cluster, how long are you guys leaving this on?
At least for 2 weeks. After that, if I trip over the wire, sorry. If I don't trip over the wire, it will probably stay online. If the energy prices go up way high again, I might shut it down. But right now, I am having some experiments in that cluster also, so it will stay online for a while.
It's the same for me. Have fun playing the games.
Yeah. And if you beat the 10,000 score on PacMan, send me a screenshot, and probably have some Cilium swag. I've got some stickers. I've got some pens. I will send some swags to people who beat my score.
By the way,
Cool.
Cilium stickers look great on your home lab. Just place them on there.
Exactly. Fantastic. I think we will close the session for now. And I thank you very much for everybody joining. Thank you very much, Marty and Dario, for sharing your home lab stories. Hopefully that was good fun for everybody. And yeah, I will be in Chicago next week. If you see me, say hello. Again, thank you everybody for joining, and take care.
Thank you. Bye. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great KubeCon.